For 12 years of marriage, my husband never once introduced me as his equal. I was always my wife, never by name, always present yet conveniently invisible. That did not change until the night of his company's annual international reception. I stood before the full-length mirror in our bedroom, the glass cold under my fingers. The reflection showed a 38-year-old woman with calm posture and composed features, but eyes tired from years of shrinking herself. I wore a navy blue dress, modest and unremarkable, exactly as Michael Turner preferred. He believed attention was dangerous for women who did not know how to handle it. The door opened without warning. Michael glanced at me, frowned, and told me this evening was not about me. Smile if spoken to. Do not volunteer opinions. Do not embarrass him. Then he left. Silence filled the room. I had not always been silent. At 25, I spoke 3 languages and worked in conference halls where precision mattered more than volume. Marriage did not erase that overnight. It dulled me slowly. I opened a hidden drawer and touched old certificates and conference passes, proof that I once believed my voice had value. Tonight, I would attend quietly. The drive to the reception hall passed in silence, broken only by the low hum of the engine and Michael's occasional instructions. "When we arrive, stay close," he said without looking at me. "Don't speak unless you're spoken to, and even then, keep it short." I nodded, eyes fixed on the city lights sliding past the window. I had learned that responding too much invited criticism, while silence was often mistaken for obedience. The car stopped beneath a wide glass canopy. Inside, the reception hall glowed with polished marble floors, towering chandeliers, and the steady murmur of confident voices. Men in tailored suits and women in elegant dresses moved easily through the space, exchanging handshakes and laughter as if this world had always belonged to them. Michael straightened his jacket before stepping out. When he opened my door, his smile was perfect, public, practiced, empty. "Remember," he whispered through his smile, "tonight is important." A woman approached us immediately, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She wore a fitted burgundy dress and carried herself with the assurance of someone who knew she was admired. "Michael," she said warmly, slipping into his space with ease. "You're later than planned." He laughed. "I got caught in traffic." Then she turned her gaze toward me, pausing just long enough to assess. "And you must be his wife," she said. "I'm Olivia, his senior assistant." Her smile was polite, but her eyes were not. I inclined my head slightly. "Nice to meet you." She looked surprised, then amused. "Oh, you speak." Michael laughed again, louder this time. "She prefers staying in the background. It suits her." Without waiting, Olivia linked her arm through his and guided him toward the center of the hall. I followed a few steps behind, already invisible. Michael gestured toward a small table near the wall. "You can sit here. It's quieter. I'll come get you later." I sat as instructed, hands folded neatly in my lap. From that position, I could clearly see the long table reserved for the international delegation. Several men and women sat there, reviewing documents, their expressions increasingly impatient. One of them checked his watch for the 3rd time. The dinner began with formal introductions. Michael spoke confidently, outlining his company's vision. A hired interpreter translated beside him, hesitating often, smoothing phrases that should have remained precise. I noticed the first error almost immediately. Michael said, "We're eager to share our technology to strengthen cooperation." The interpreter translated it loosely, stripping away the careful legal nuance. A few minutes later, the conversation turned to contracts. Michael gestured broadly. "We are willing to share usage rights with regional partners." The interpreter paused, then said, "We will transfer the technology to local partners." The atmosphere shifted instantly. One of the executives leaned forward sharply. "Transfer? he repeated. That was never agreed. Another voice followed, tense and clipped. This would constitute a breach of contract. Chairs moved, papers were gathered. Michael's face drained of color. What's happening? He demanded. What are they saying? The interpreter stammered. They believe there is a violation. This is ridiculous, Michael snapped. Tell them they misunderstood. But it was already too late. The lead executive stood. We do not continue negotiations under these conditions. The music softened, then stopped entirely. Conversations around us fell quiet as attention turned toward the unfolding scene. I felt my pulse steady instead of racing. I placed my glass on the table and stood. Michael noticed me then. His eyes widened. What are you doing? He hissed. Sit down. I walked forward anyway, my steps measured, my posture straight. Whispers followed me through the room. I stopped in front of the delegation and spoke calmly, in fluent German. There has been a translation error, I said. Please allow me to clarify. The room froze. The lead executive studied me closely. You speak German? Yes, I replied. And the clause in question refers strictly to licensing, not ownership transfer. The technology remains entirely yours. His expression changed, anger cooling into focus. I continued, explaining the terms carefully, referencing specific sections of the draft. When questions came about production capacity and timelines, I answered with clarity. When logistics were challenged, I addressed them directly, switching to French when necessary. Each sentence felt like reclaiming something I had once been forced to abandon. Michael stood behind me, silent. Olivia's confident posture faltered. By the time the discussion resumed, the delegation had returned to their seats. Notes were taken, questions were asked, this time addressed to me. For the first time that night, I was not an accessory. I was the solution. The reception ended much later than scheduled, but the outcome had already been decided. Contracts were signed, hands were shaken, photographs were taken, yet none of that belonged to Michael anymore. As guests drifted toward the exit, conversations followed me instead of him. Polite questions turned into genuine interest. Several members of the delegation thanked me directly, their expressions respectful, even impressed. Michael stood a few steps away, stiff and silent, watching something he had never imagined, his wife becoming visible. In the corridor outside the hall, he finally spoke. You didn't tell me you could do all that, he said, his voice tight. You made me look unprepared. I looked at him calmly. I didn't make you look like anything. I fixed a problem you didn't see. He scoffed, trying to recover his authority. You had no right to step in like that. You humiliated me in front of everyone. That was the moment I understood something clearly. He would rather lose the deal than allow me to be competent. I didn't argue. That night, back in the quiet of the house, I packed a single suitcase. I left behind the jewelry, the dresses chosen for me, the life designed to keep me small. I took only documents, books, and the proof of who I had been before I learned to disappear. The separation that followed was not dramatic. It was final. Weeks later, I accepted an offer to work as an independent strategic consultant. The position came with authority, autonomy, and respect. 3 things my marriage never allowed. I moved forward without bitterness, not because the past didn't hurt, but because it no longer controlled me. 1 year later, I stood in a conference hall speaking to an audience of women from different countries and industries. I told them my story, not as a tale of revenge, but as a reminder. I said, silence is often mistaken for weakness, but it is usually survival. The danger comes when we forget who we are beneath it. The applause that followed was not loud because it was polite. It was loud because it was personal. If this story reached you, if you recognized yourself somewhere between the lines, Remember this: you are not too quiet. You are not invisible, and you are never late to reclaim your voice. Sometimes, one moment is enough.